Okay, we're live now.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, which will focus on initial draft plans to strengthen Bath City Centre's protection from the ongoing threat from terrorism. So thank you for booking to take part, and it's really important that you contribute to make sure we actually get these proposals right. I am Dina Romero. I am Bath and North East Somerset's Council Leader, and I'll be chairing this webinar. This webinar is expected to be an hour long, and it will begin with a short film in which we will briefly explain the proposals. This will be followed by an opportunity to meet and hear from our panel of experts from the council and also from the police. And this will enable you to hear more detail about the scheme and to hear their answers to your questions. I'll introduce them all to you after the film. COVID-19 has meant we have all had to change the way we do things. How we consult with the community has had to change too, moving from exhibitions to online consultation. This webinar forms an important initial part of our online consultation on the City Security Project. You have been specifically invited because of your close relationship with the city centre. We are extending consultation through to at least the 15th of January next year to give everyone a good chance to have their say. Your input into this webinar will be warmly received and will be used to help us shape the best possible scheme during the early part of next year. The consultation website provides you and the public with further information about the scheme and includes the portal link for you to register your feedback with us. If you need to get hold of the information in a different format, then we will be pleased to provide it. This is the first stage of consultation. You will receive a second but formal opportunity to comment on final proposals when the necessary traffic orders to enforce it are advertised. This is scheduled for spring next year. And whilst we are working towards putting new permanent security features in place by the end of 2021, we plan for the existing temporary measures to stay exactly as they are, unless, of course, the government feels that COVID-19 has retreated sufficiently to remove social distancing requirements beforehand. We will be recording this webinar so people who could not be here will be able to watch and listen to the questions and panel response later. So please let us know by using the chat function now if this causes a problem for you. So just very quickly, I'll just let you know that after the film and the various presentations from our panelists, I will ask that you put any questions that you have into the question and answer function, and that way we'll be able to keep a firm eye on the question and answer. Sometimes when they go into the chat, it becomes a bit muddled. So thank you very much in advance for the questions that you're going to be putting in, and as I said, for your attendance as well. So I'd now like to move on and introduce you to the proposals. Firstly, by watching Councillor Joanna Wright and Inspector Martin Rowland, who are both here this evening, in a short introductory film.
Here at Bath and North East Somerset Council, we've been working with Avon and Somerset Police, residents and businesses to keep Bath safe, secure and welcoming. We want to protect our beautiful city and the people who live, work and visit here from the threat of terrorism.
So we know there is a national threat to the United Kingdom from terrorism, and we know from past attacks that crowded places have been targeted. Counter-terrorism security advisors from my team have been working with Bath and North East Somerset Council on ways to keep the city centre safe, secure and protected, and have given their support to a scheme which limits vehicle access during the busiest times. Now, this is part of a package of measures that is designed to improve overall public safety and further strengthen protection in areas of high footfall.
We appreciate how important vehicle access is within the city for our local businesses, residents and visitors, particularly people with restricted mobility. We also know that COVID-19 has had a big effect on the footfall within the city. We've been working closely with Avon and Somerset Police to shape proposed measures to improve security within the city centre to an appropriate level, and we think this will be a big factor in supporting the city's recovery and success. We're proposing a set of measures that will begin to replace the existing concrete barriers with a series of static and moving bollards that will fit within the character of the city and function well. This is alongside restrictions that will permanently manage vehicle access within the most crowded parts of the city centre. We are proposing to place permanent static bollards on streets such as Burton Street and Old Bond Street, Barton Street, Westgate buildings, Bow Street and Southgate Street. And we are proposing to place sliding bollards on York Street, Cheap Street, Upper Borough Walls, Lower Borough Walls and Hot Bath Street, as is currently in place for social distancing. From 10 a.m. to 6 p.m, access will be provided via CCTV control room for authorised vehicles only, such as emergency access, major construction or road workers, removal companies and bank cash lorries. To maintain safety through the night, it will be necessary to maintain limited access restrictions. From 6 p.m. to 10 a.m, access will be granted again by CCTV for business and home deliveries, market traders and waste collection. Pedestrians, cyclists and emergency vehicles will have access at all times. To maintain necessary levels of security inside the secure zone, it is not possible to have any on-street car parking. This includes blue badge holder parking. We know this will be inconvenient, particularly for those with restricted mobility. We are creating a package for alternative parking and drop-off points for blue badge holders to ensure the City of Bath remains as inclusive and as accessible as it can, whilst maintaining its safety for everybody. We're really keen for you to get in touch with us and have your say on our draft proposals. Your comments will help us to shape the security of our city. We are asking you for your comments from now until January 2021, with the aim to install as quickly as possible later that year. You can get in touch with us online or by post.
Thank you, Joanna and Martin, for that helpful introduction that I think has given us all a clear foundation of understanding of the scheme. So we'll now move into the part of the webinar where your questions will be answered by a panel of experts. So I'd like to introduce that panel of experts. Firstly, Councillor Joanna Wright, who is Cabinet Member for Transport Services. Inspector Martin Rowland.
Hello.
Who is Prepare and Protect Counter-Terrorism Police for the South West. Peter Naish, who is Counter-Terrorism Security Advisor for Avon and Somerset Police.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, Peter. Also, Gary Peacock, who is our Deputy Group Manager for Highways and Traffic.
Good evening.
Linda Dean, who is the Senior Manager entrusted with reopening and renewing the High Street workstream, as well as being our emergency management and events.
Good evening.
And finally, Steve Froggatt, who is a Design and Projects Manager in our Highways and Traffic team. And you need to unmute, Steve.
Good evening, sorry.
That's okay. It's always a good test, actually, to make sure everybody's mic properly works. Okay, so in order to get the best out of this webinar, I'm going to group questions and answers into key topics. And I'm also going to refer to some of the comments that we've already received from the consultation, which I'm sure many of you will be aware started just a few days ago. So we'll start with some questions about why we are doing this scheme and why now. So I guess the first question then is, just referring, as I said, back to those responses that we've received from the public about why these proposals are needed in Bath, as surely the risks from terrorism are far higher in London. So perhaps, Joanna, could you provide a brief introduction to explain why the council is proposing these security measures now? And then perhaps Martin or Peter, could you provide a little bit more detail from the police perspective?
Sure. So there was a report to the council in 2016, and it was about security in the city centre particularly. And the police had made a number of observations in this report, which highlighted the many vulnerabilities that we had and the things that we needed to look at and change. So including in that was city centre CCTV monitoring, staff and steward training, temporary hostile vehicle mitigation measures, and vehicle bollards, essentially large concrete barriers to stop hostile vehicles. So sadly, the safety and security of the city must therefore now include for the prevention of terrorism, and we continue to work with the police to protect people, livelihoods and the heritage of the Bath city centre from this ongoing threat. So I'm sure you're aware in many parts of the world there have been awful incidents in places that we weren't always expecting them. And we equally have to take that consideration and treat it seriously in this city.
Thank you, Joanna. Can I now ask, I'm not sure whether Peter or Martin wants to go first.
Yeah, no, I'll say something if that's okay. Well, just to say that the relationship that we have with Bath Council is excellent, and it's an ongoing relationship, very similar to ones that we have with other cities across the whole southwest region. My role is protect and prepare. It's part of the government contest strategy for counter-terrorism, and we look to protect spaces and we look to prepare to be prepared in the event of a terrorist incident. And we're looking very much at the protect sphere today, and our role really is to identify vulnerabilities and then to signpost people to those solutions, and that's what we've done here. So we were involved in work with the council. Those vulnerabilities were identified, and then we've signposted them to some of the solutions that they can, and we're very much in support of the solutions that they have suggested with this scheme. And I think that it's fair for me to say that we think these measures will improve the safety of Bath, particularly from things like hostile vehicle mitigation. The general threat from terrorism at the moment is severe, which means that an attack is highly likely. Now, what does that mean in reality? Well, up until recently, we've been at substantial, meaning an attack is likely. So you can see that the threat has gone up only very recently. You will have seen the horrendous attacks that happened in this country over the last few years. You will have seen the awful things that have been happening in Europe recently, and that's led to the increase. It's a global threat. It takes many different forms and comes from varied sources. But we always balance the message around terrorism, which is for people to be alert, but not alarmed. So the measures that we always look to signpost people to are proportionate, and they do take into consideration the fact that this is Bath and not London, but that the threat is still there and it is still real. And as the assessment says, an attack is highly likely, and it would be remiss of us not to put some measures in like this, particularly in a crowded place like Bath, somewhere that's a World Heritage Site, somewhere that has a lot of tourism. The impact of terrorism is huge. We all know about the human impact of terrorism, but the economic impact is also massive. Loss of confidence for tourism, loss of trade. You may remember the Borough Market attacks in London in 2017. There was some research conducted after that. For every 10 minutes that the police officers, the armed officers who arrived and ultimately stopped that attack, every 10 minutes added to their response time, you were looking at hundreds of thousands of pounds added in additional costs to business, to the economy in that area. So being able to prevent things, being able to protect against them, it really does pay off. And this is just one of a raft of number of measures that we're doing. There's lots of other things that have been mentioned, but this is one. It's a key one. It has our full support. It's in line with a very recently published Crowded Places document that's come out that highlights the types of vulnerabilities to places like Bath. So it's absolutely timely. It's absolutely correct. And I'll come back and finish on that message of it. It's alert, not alarm. We don't want people to be alarmed, but we do want people to be alert. And this measure, I think, very much sits with that ethos.
Thank you, Martin. I don't know, Peter, if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
was just trying to unmute myself then. No, Martin's covered it very nicely. But I mean, the threat level was dictated to the nation by the Joint Terrorist Analysis Centre. So, and it is a threat to the country as a whole. So it isn't just about London or Birmingham or Manchester. And it's no surprise that for us, Bath is a very significant tourist attraction. And in the southwest, it is clearly one of our busiest places. So, hence the amount of work that we have been involved with BAMES. So, but Martin's covered it very nicely. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we heard, so these are similar proposals to those being planned for other places such as York, Canterbury, and Chester. So I just really wanted to ask Linda, if you've got anything else you wanted to add about how, whether these measures are actually proportionate.
Thanks, Dina, and thank you, Martin and Peter, for your comments. Yeah, we've worked really hard with Pete, and we've a lot of footfall on the ground, walking around the city and just checking and challenging really both our police colleagues and ourselves as to whether or not the extent of the access restrictions is proportionate, are in the right place. And it's no surprise to anyone that on a normal day, and I appreciate that we're in a pandemic, but on a normal day and a normal year, we see in excess of 1 million visitors coming into the city of Bath. And in particular, they are focused on the areas of the Abbey and the Roman Baths. And as Martin alluded to, if anything was to happen, particularly in that central core with all of those visitors, the cost to not only humans' life and also the economy would be severe. We can only see in a pandemic the knock that it's had to our local economy, and recovery from a terrorism attack would affect international visitors for years, if not decades to come. So we have to protect our central heritage core. I know that people are concerned about other areas of the city, but this report is very much focused on our high footfall, and our high footfall is in and around the Abbey and the Roman Baths in the first instance, and so that is where our focus lies. It also, the areas that we are able to put in the access restrictions allows us to do that while still permitting access at certain times, and we certainly want to work with the businesses and the residents of those areas on how we can minimise that impact. The temporary measures that are currently in some ways have demonstrated areas where we need to improve, where we need to work with the businesses. They went in very quickly and not how we would have wanted them to go in. It's quite cumbersome because it's a manually operated system, whereas this will be an electronic, automatic system managed by our CCTV. So it is something that we want to continue the dialogue with the businesses and residents on, but it is a very real threat that we are working with our police colleagues and continue to do so. Thanks, Dina.
Thank you, Linda. And I think that's really emphasises why we're looking to do this now and not wait until, some sort of threat is more known. But as much as anything else, I guess these measures take some time to be implemented. So I'm just having a quick look to see if there's any questions coming up on the chat on this particular area, and I'm not seeing anything. And I was just going to I think it'd be quite useful as well to hear a little bit more, perhaps from Linda, about the access for businesses, because there has been a question that was asked, I think, in the chat about how those businesses who rely perhaps on larger lorries, particularly, how they will receive their goods, etc. So it was just really to have just some indication of that work that you've already done in discussing this with other businesses.
Yeah, I actually think Steve's probably got the more comprehensive, because it's been Steve and Simon in his team that have been working on the access restrictions on in terms of the temporary measures that we've currently got and how we manage that, and the lessons that we're learning from that as to who we can and will be able to permit access. Steve, do you want to pick this point up?
Yeah, certainly. During the daytime hours, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m, there generally won't be very much access provided for deliveries. Essentially, the road is being closed to all but emergency vehicles, utility vehicles, and vehicles that have got authorised access, which are reasonably far, few and far between. Where a delivery is needed, either to a business or to a resident, and it cannot be made outside of the hours 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. One thing that the public have available to them is an access request form on the council's website, which allows them to request permission for access for vehicular traffic that is unavoidable. The council will then consider that request and permission will either be granted or not. If permission is granted for a vehicle to access in the city centre system, which will be controlled by CCTV, the person who's accessing must be able to show that they're the named driver. The vehicle that's accessing the registration number would have to comply with the details on the request form. So there is a method of ensuring that people can get unavoidable deliveries during the day if need to be, but it is subject to that process.
Is that a very long, lengthy process? I mean, how much in advance would you need that information? What we've said at the moment, and we're actually running this system at the moment for the temporary security system during the daytime between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. What we ask for on the website is that we're given 20 days notice. Now, whilst that seems like quite a long time, it's deliberately done that way to ensure that for something that people know is needed, a house move, for example, or a particular delivery, it gives enough time for them to actually make that request for us to consider it and to get back to them. Obviously, we'd still respond if it didn't come in with 20 days notice, but ideally from our perspective, we need some time to look at it and consider it. What we're trying to do is to reduce vehicular access into the space during the daytime when the streets are crowded. So therefore, we're not looking to let vehicles through unless they absolutely have to, such as emergency vehicles. Thank you. Yes, I note a comment from Aholia on our chat, which is around 20 days seems like a long time. And I guess also when you note that lots of perhaps white goods shops, do offer delivery, perhaps even the next day. So I wondered if we've had any thoughts about how we could accommodate much shorter requests. Certainly, where we've got emergency situations, for example, somebody's got a burst pipe in the property, let's say, then we obviously understand that they need a plumber there as soon as they can get one there. Now, what we'd expect there, or what we'd assume, is we're likely to get about an hour's notice, and that would need to be relayed through to the council CCTV team, who control these automated access points, to ensure that they were able to let the vehicle through. Once again, the type of information that CCTV team would need would be who the driver was, what property they were going to, etc., which is why we'd be looking for the property owner to make those arrangements with the CCTV team. So there are measures to enable shorter timescales, but I think the essential difference is the longer timescale is for things that are planned, where people know that things are happening a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in advance, whereas we have got emergency situations where requests will need to be directed to the CCTV team. We haven't got anything like that in process at the moment because the temporary access gates that are in place are controlled by
by our traffic wardens, our COVID wardens. But once again, the information would go through to them in this instance. So the council is looking at a number of ways and means where, if access is unavoidable, it can certainly be requested.
And Dina, sorry, can I just come in there? Because also
course.
what we're looking to do, and on the map that I think we're showing, or certainly in the consultation pack, is areas of loading, introducing more loading areas just on the periphery, so that those people that need to have alternative loading bays. I think we just need to stress that we need to reduce the traffic in that area for the reasons that Martin and Pete have outlined earlier, but also, you know, if we are restricting access to protect our visitors and our residents, then, you know, we have to reduce the numbers of vehicles that are allowed down those streets. So, as I said, working with colleagues in highways to introduce more loading bays on the periphery. We want to encourage, certainly some of the businesses that we've been talking to are really keen to take up the opportunity of electric cargo bikes. And I appreciate that won't work for everybody, but where we can, and I'd be really interested in exploring other options in terms of last mile deliveries, etc. So that's why we want to work with the businesses on what options we can explore as part of this consultation, and it gives us time to think about that and to help them. We certainly don't, it might seem that we want to hinder, we certainly don't want to do that. You know, as part of our reopening and our renewing of our high streets, it's more important than ever at this time. But we do have to look at doing these access restrictions, and we want to work with you on those solutions.
Thank you, Linda. And I think the main thing to note then is, if these solutions don't work for you, please make sure that you write into the consultation so that we can take on board your comments and find out if there's another way of mitigating this particular issue for you or for your business. So I'm going to just move on now to another area of concern for lots of people, which is around access for disabled and blue badge holders. So we've received quite a few comments to date, not only from the public, but also from councillors who have expressed concerns over disabled access and associated parking. Joanna, can I ask you if you could provide some initial response to this, please?
Yes, I mean, it is a real concern, and I fully appreciate how many people this might affect, but unfortunately, we will not be allowing any parking in the area, including for blue badge holders. And I know that's said with, you know, with a tough heart, actually, because I know how important it is for a lot of those people to have access to the city centre and how they need to move around. So the council is really committed to maximising the accessibility of the city centre and minimising the impacts caused by securing it from the terrorist threat. And we realise that we therefore are commissioning an independent access consultant to engage with blue badge holders and vulnerable people and other stakeholders to help identify a package of measures that will mitigate schemes and the scheme's impacts on the disabled community and optimise opportunities to deliver its benefits. The study will and the engagement will take place, highly likely to be in January 2021. We realise that dedicated blue badge holders on-street parking bays remain available within the streets surrounding the access restrictions, and existing temporary COVID-19 will also remain in place, subject to the government maintaining social distancing requirements. So I'm sure many of you know that even in the last few months, we've had to shut down the city centre. And because of that, we've had to really think about blue badge holders and how they get to the city. And myself and officers have done several walks with a variety of vulnerable people to look at their issues and how it impacts them. So we are really, really concerned about this change to their lives and how the importance of making the centre of the city secure will affect this particular group of residents.
Thank you very much, Joanna. And I think that partly addresses the point that's been raised by Councillor Tim Ball which is about ensuring that vulnerable and disabled people can access key shops and services. And I wonder, so I think you said that we are looking to make sure that we've got almost like a ring of permit spaces.
There's certainly a ring of permit spaces, and we've also we also provide access in our car parks. So there are lots of spaces where disabled people can go to and get to the city centre, but it won't be in the usual way that they have had previously. So there will have to be changes to people's lives, but this is to protect the centre and to make sure it's secure for everyone.
Thank you, Joanna. So is there any other points perhaps the panelists would like to raise on this question of disabled parking while I look on the chat and see if there's any other questions that have arisen?
I don't think there's anything in particular, but I think as part of the review that we will be doing, as Jo mentioned, we will be working with the various equalities groups that are set up, including the Travel Access Group. Apologies, I've probably got their title wrong. And with our own colleagues within the Council's Equalities team. So yeah, we will continue to work with those as part of this review, as Joanna said.
And obviously, as I said before, if anybody's got any specific concerns or anything that they don't feel is being mitigated against, then please let us know so that we can take it into account. So thank you. So I'd now like to move on to other people who are impacted by these measures, in particular taxi drivers. So I've been on had a couple of radio interviews in the last few days, and I've been asked questions from representatives of taxi drivers about how they will pick up their fares, how they will be able to drop off customers who might perhaps want to go into that zone. I don't know if this is something that's already been considered by either Highways or by any of our other panelists. Steve.
At the moment, the proposals are that there would be no taxi access. Obviously, that is something that's coming through on the responses that we're getting to the survey at the moment, as you suggest. As Joanne said, we are going to be undertaking an extensive accessibility study in January. They will engage with all the relevant stakeholder groups, and taxi access and its relation to the disabled who use them will be something that we need to look at and see whether we can provide any mitigations. But as I say, at the moment, it isn't within the allowable vehicles.
Thank you. And I thought that we were going to have some more drop off or bays as well. Is that something that's been planned too?
There's a number of drop off bays that have been provided for loading and unloading around the edges of the current temporary access restrictions. And once again, this is something that I think Highways needs to review more to see whether there's any further ones that we can find.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm now going to change the subject very fractionally, which actually may be a question that perhaps could have been brought in at the beginning about the need, but I think it is a very important question, and it's been raised by Ian Perkins, which and I'll read the question as it's been sent in. Given that many of the most recent terror attacks have not involved vehicles, why have you chosen to focus on this threat with its severe impact on the many people who live in the city centre? And what are you planning to do to mitigate the impact on city centre residents, as this seems to be missing from your current proposals? So I think some of that has already been in part answered through the consultation work that we're doing. But I think it'd be really interesting to hear from the police on this particularly, and why we're focusing on vehicles as opposed to perhaps on people.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to come in relation to that. I mean, I think we are covering off just one particular threat, but it is a recognised threat. We're not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that there are a number of threats. This is just one of them. Doing what you're doing will in part prevent a vehicle being used as a weapon or a vehicle being used as an improvised explosive device. And clearly we have seen across Europe, Berlin in 2016, a German market being targeted. You have your own market here. In London in 2017, 3 events involving vehicles: London Bridge, Westminster Bridge, Finsbury Park. Barcelona the same year, 13 people were killed. In 2018, we had the car crashing outside of the Houses of Parliament. So it's one method. It doesn't cover off everything. Clearly, it doesn't. But we're just addressing this one particular threat, and it is a threat, as Martin's already highlighted.
So we're not just ignoring any other threat. This is just one threat that we're addressing in one particular way.
Can I come in there? And I think what I think Martin said is part of a layered approach. So it's the training that we do both internally with our own staff, but we in partnership with the Business Improvement District, we offer training to anyone from shop, retail staff, hospitality industry, obviously our own CCTV team, what to look out for, anything that might be anyone that might be acting suspiciously. In addition, Avon and Somerset Police deploy their Project Servitor on a number of occasions in the city. So you will have seen the horses. Sometimes there's a larger group of police officers that come in and they're handing out information and just raising awareness. And what we hope this demonstrates is that actually we're a city that's serious about the information that we've been given. And to not do anything would be foolhardy. If we didn't do anything and something dreadful was to happen, then we could potentially then be highly criticised. So it is very much a layered approach, and it's not just as we said about vehicles. However, this is one of the largest interventions we need to put in. That's harder measure, and so it's obviously more visible. The other stuff that we've been doing has probably not been visible to members of the public, but this is one of those measures. Hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Linda. And I think you may have also had a screen there which actually showed what was being proposed, and also some of the vehicles and the sorts of mitigations that could be used to help residents as well. So I'm now going to just see if there's any further questions that have come in. So we've got a question now about the CCTV. So is it possible to share any additional information about how the CCTV system will work?
Yeah, I can answer that. So a vehicle, let's say it's a delivery lorry coming to Westgate Street at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's a liveried delivery vehicle. It will press the button to announce itself to CCTV that it's come. It's a vehicle, I'm trying to think, Poundland, that's a good one. Poundland vehicle, it's liveried, and the driver is known, and so then CCTV will then open the device to allow the vehicle through. The vehicle will be watched through to make sure it is a legitimate vehicle, and then the and then the gates the bollards will then close. If it's let's say it's an emergency vehicle, we have radio contact with most of our emergency services. They would radio in advance to say that they are coming to under blue lights, and that they need the bollards open. The bollards take, and I think it's 15 to 20 seconds to open, so it's not long. They will open, and the emergency vehicle will come through. Alternatively, if a vehicle arrives at 10:30 in the morning and it doesn't have permission to come through, then the CCTV operator will be saying, I'm sorry, unfortunately, you're not allowed to come through on this point. This is the process you need to go to if you do need to come through in the future, but I'm sorry, you'll need to move away. So that's the process that would it'd be manned 24/7.
So will there be somewhere for say a large vehicle to turn around if they then get to the bollard and they're not allowed access?
Well, there certainly is on Terrace Walk and on the entrance to Cheap Street. One of the conversations that we've been having internally is the lower borough walls one. That's a challenge for us, and despite us putting signs and saying, unfortunately, not everyone obeys signs, Dina, and they continue to drive. So that is one of the conversations that I'm having with colleagues in highways and how we look to mitigate that challenge.
Thank you. And then I've got another question, which is a very specific one about whether or not the bus gate at the top of Milsom Street will be replaced by a physical barrier. And I must admit, I can't remember what was on the original map. So perhaps one of our highway experts.
So I can answer that one. Milsom Street isn't part of this plan. Milsom Street is separate. There is consultation on an experimental traffic regulation order due to start in January, and that is to continue as a bus gate, but with no physical measures in place for Milsom Street. It's managed by an ANPR, automatic number plate recognition camera, and that will continue for now. And then as part of our continuing planning for the city centre, sometime in the future, we will probably consult on that area of the city as well.
Okay, thank you. So that makes that very clear. And that's obviously using the information and advice from the police and anti-terrorist bodies. So as we've said, our protection is for our heritage centre at the moment, which is around the Abbey and the Roman Baths, because that's where the highest footfall usually is outside of pandemic times. Thank you very much, Linda. Right, so are there any other questions that have come in? Anything else anybody would like to hear about? So I think you've picked up the question that we have here around somebody who has, has a stroke, and they will, as you said, ambulances will be able to access that area within a matter of seconds. Thank you. So I'm just seeing if there's anything further in the chat as well. So there is, so has there been any consideration of perhaps almost like two rings, one with perhaps a lesser impact on people's daily lives, and then a much more secure sort of ring of steel in the city centre as well? Perhaps I can ask our two police representatives if they've, some of the process that they went through before coming up with this particular plan.
Pete, are you happy to cover that one with your greater knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, things have been bitten off and looked at the footfall, and this is as Linda has highlighted, the area significantly in the city centre, the heritage area. It's not discounting looking at a wider area in terms of an order which would allow those roads to be closed off in a soft way. So this is going to be the hard measures in the city centre itself, but on an outer area there may well be consideration of softer measures. So if the police were needed to shut off those roads, they would do so, but in a softer way. So non-hard physical measures. So yeah, we're concentrating on the area of significant footfall and that's what's happened.
Thank you, Peter. And just one more question, actually, which is, what do these things look like? How are they going to fit in with our beautiful city? Steve?
We're currently working with our heritage colleagues on what the bollards effectively will look like. Obviously, we understand the heritage setting we've got, and we're trying to be respectful to that. They will be black. I think there's a picture in the article that is actually on the website which shows some silver moving bollards. Those are in Southampton. I say we are in discussions at the moment. Nothing's been agreed as yet. They will be black in colour, but yeah, we're talking to the heritage people involved, including the city centre heritage manager.
Thank you.
The middle one, yeah, sorry, Dina. The middle photo there that's just come up on the screen shows effectively what automatic moving bollards, sliding bollards would look like. The two central silver bollards, they would be black in Bath, effectively move back at 45 degrees to open up to allow vehicles through. The photos to the top and bottom of that are photos of various different bollards in London. Once again, we'd be looking at a standard type of black bollard that suited Bath's setting and heritage.
Thank you very much, Steve. So another range of questions then is around parking. So for those residents who currently are able to park in the city centre, once their parking is removed, where will they then be able to park? Right, who would like, Steve, it's back to you.
Effectively, in terms of the number of residents who would lose parking places, I had it on a piece of paper down here somewhere. A few residents' parking places will be lost in York Street, and I think in Cheap Street. I think there's about 9 spaces in Cheap Street and 1 in York Street. Could have that wrong. Obviously, it is an impact on residents, and initially we'd be looking for them to look for other places to park within the central parking zone. Once again, if this is coming through as a strong topic with regard to responses from people as from the consultation, it's something that we would consider through the consultation period.
So we could consider space in our car parks, for example.
I understand at the moment, I think there's nighttime permissions for people to be able to park, residents to park in our car parks. Once again, that's a discussion with parking services as to whether there was any potential for allowing anything additional on top of that. As I say, if it comes through as part of the consultation, it's something that the officers in parking and highways can consider further.
Mm. So as ever, you know, with everybody who's written in with questions, please make sure that you also respond to the consultation so that that can be taken into account. So I have a question now about archaeology. So will there be an archaeological watching brief as these bollards are implemented? Steve, is that a you question?
It's a me question. These bollards actually should be being able to be constructed with only about 0.5 metre depth of construction, which isn't dissimilar to a standard depth of road. So we think it's unlikely that we're going to have to go so deep that we'll be affecting any archaeology in Bath. One of the things that we'll be carrying out reasonably soon, certainly January time, if not before, is we'll be digging some excavation trial holes to look at the areas where these automated bollards and static bollards will be going, but we don't think we'll be going down to the depth that is going to impact on any archaeology within Bath.
Okay, well, that's useful to know, but obviously we'll keep our eyes open in case there is something that we need to take notice of. And as I think mentioned in the chat as well, it does give us an opportunity to perhaps do some other public realm improvements, such as widening pavements, etc., if parking is removed. So I'm actually going to pass now to Gary Peacock, who you will note hasn't said very much so far, just to talk us through the next steps. Over to you, Gary.
Okay, thank you, Dina. We've got a timeline here which just sets out our steps really forward into operational. The consultation finishes in January the 15th, and I think just hearing everyone today is just really, really important that those comments that have been made today are put into the consultation, because following the 15th, we will be looking to review the responses, and that gives us an opportunity to review and refine our proposals. From there, in March, we will then have our final proposals in place, and we'll look to advertise a traffic regulation order. And that gives the members of the public another opportunity to make comments. That traffic regulation order would be looking to bring to fruition and complete by the summer of 2021. From there onwards, we'd then be looking to undertake the installation of the security measures with aim for the TRO and the sliding bollards to become operational in the winter, December 2021. So it's possibly by this time next year, we'll be looking to have a scheme that's moving towards operation.
Thank you, Gary. And can you just pick up on a point that was also asked, which is around consulting with our main utility providers? So where do they fit in this?
There's twice. So they're actually being picked up as part of this consultation. We'll be consulting with the main utility providers at this moment. So again, it's understanding what their issues are. And then when we go forward to the formal consultation, they will be consulted again. But hopefully the whole point of what we're doing today is trying to understand the issues so we can just work around how we may or may not be able to mitigate some of the issues that are being raised and refine the scheme to try and pick up on those issues.
So we'll be approaching them directly. We won't be hoping that they respond to the consultation.
No, they will be one of our statutory consultations at the formal stage, but we will make sure we approach them during this informal stage before January. Thank
you very much, Gary. So let me see if there's anything else that's come up. Right, so I think this is just almost sort of like some perhaps more detailed questions that you might be expecting. So I've got a comment in the chat, which is from a representative of the haulier industry, and his question is to Steve, or rather is asking, is Steve the best person to speak to with regards to HGV matters? Steve, are you the best person?
Does he mean generally or a question now?
I think generally, as it seems that I noticed earlier in the webinar, there was a lot of questions from him about perhaps quite specific concerns that he and I'm sure his fellow drivers will have in access.
I think what I suggest, obviously, this webinar is being recorded, so we've got a record of all the comments that have been made to date. What I'd advise is that he completes the consultation questionnaire and forwards it through to us. There's various different teams within the highways service who will also have an interest in and be able to advise on those matters. It's something that will be considered throughout the consultation process. So yeah, basically send the comments in and they will be considered.
Thank you very much, Steve. Okay, so we are coming to the last sort of 5 minutes of our webinar. and I'm just going to go around the panel and see if there's any points that they'd like to raise, any additional comments that they would like to make that haven't been asked by any of our audience today, but I think would be useful to perhaps share with the public. So if I take you in the order that you're on my screen, so I'm starting with Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Dina. I think just to reiterate what I said at the start, really, which is that the threat from terrorism is severe. It's a major issue, and we're talking about, you know, the loss of life and the huge economic impact. But we are very much aware of keeping things proportionate. You know, we don't ask for things to be implemented that are disproportionate. We are aware that people need to live their lives, to run their businesses. Nobody wants to live in a society, if you pardon the pun, at the moment that's in a lockdown. So we are aware of that, and you know, and we do work with the council and other councils in trying to get that balance right. So of course we understand the concerns that people have quite rightly raised, and I can, you know, I'm very reassured from what the council have said, and hopefully people will be as well in terms of what they can do. I just want to reassure from the police's perspective, we are aware of that as well, and we don't ask for anything, or we don't recommend anything or signpost anything that we think is disproportionate. We only do it because we think it's the right thing to do for keeping the centre of Bath safe.
Thank you, Martin. And Peter, do you have anything to add?
I just saw in the chat there was somebody asking about the robustness of the bollards. Well, these bollards will be, they are impact tested, so you won't be purchasing anything which is not impact tested. So it does what it says on the tin, and there's related testing standards which you will be working towards. And clearly you will have a maintenance contract which has to be, you know, tight enough so that if it is damaged in any way, it will have to be replaced in a timely fashion. So, you know, I saw that as a question. It's right and proper to answer that, to say that they will be tested measures.
Thank you, Peter, and that's very reassuring. Gary.
I think I'd just really like to reiterate about Blue Badge Access that we are committed to working with the accessibility groups. I'm really interested to meet with them and hear their issues. And you know, this is a long-term proposal in terms of what we're looking to do for the city centre, and really want to work alongside them to bring those mitigations through. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Steve?
Two very quick ones. I have just found the resident parking losses that I was looking for a minute ago. It's York Street, 9 spaces, and Lower Borough Walls, 1 space. The only other thing that I'd like to reinforce is what Linda was saying earlier. Obviously, with regard to deliveries, what we're ideally looking for is to keep vehicles out of the restricted spaces. So for the most part, we're looking for deliveries to be trolleyed in or carried in as necessary. So it's just really reinforcing that point.
Thank you very much, Steve. So I'm going to then ask Linda if you've got any other advice you'd like to give at this point.
No, and I think sort of following on from what Steve just said, we're also doing the same with waste. We want to work with the Business Improvement District and with businesses on waste collections and how those can be improved, and with the taking into consideration the access restrictions. So again, it's just working with you to help make this happen. We need to make it happen, so let's work together to do that, please.
Thank you. So at the end of the day, this isn't about just trying to be difficult, it's about making our city as safe a space as it can be. So I'm just going to ask Jo if she's got any final words before the screen that has now comes up.
Thank you. Yes, I would say take part in the consultation. That's what my message is to everybody. You know, what you feed back to us is what we can then understand what the issues are, and then we can try and address and put mitigating set measures in to help deal with those problems. We are going to have to make serious decisions around the city to protect it for everyone. It is a World Heritage City. We need to do that. because lots of people want to come here because it's a beautiful place to be and to live. So please help us to deliver that in the best way possible. Take part in the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jo, and thank you. We have the screen up, which gave how you could get involved, how you could take part in that consultation. And if you cannot access this information online, then please also you can ring us for the consultation in a different format, and the number is 01225 394041. But please take part in this consultation. Let us know your views. Let us know the issues that you will have with this, and work with us to make sure that this is less inconvenient than it could be. Because at the end of the day, this is about protecting our city, protecting our visitors, but most importantly, protecting you, our residents, as well. So thank you very much for your attention this evening. Thank you very much to all my panelists for taking part, and I look forward to hearing back from you on these issues, and indeed many other issues as well. So thank you, everybody, and good night.